welcome back everybody. Can't tell, I got my hair cut since the last video that I recorded. So if you're watching through my recording order playlist, you should be able to tell that. You might not be able to tell if you're just watching randomly, but in sequence with the other videos that I have recorded, it makes sense, I promise. Before we hop into the video, I would advise that you follow the guidance on any of the signs that I have just popped up onto the screen. And it says to check out Mount merch, so check out any of the merchandise on my YouTube channel's store page or follow the link in the description or in the pinned comment to find the full dedicated website. Today I wish to go over an Idearena subject topic idea. The last video that I just finished editing and put out on the YouTube channel was the Marvel Megalith video, Shedding Tears episode, so I don't want to spend too much time because editing is a quite energy extensive draining process. No, I want to make good on something that I have mentioned in previous videos and cover the idea of city building and arena building in the context of a three-dimensional Godzilla fighting game in the same vein as the golden trilogy of Destroy All Monsters Melee, Godzilla Save the Earth, and Godzilla Unleashed. The reason I wish to cover this is that this is a pretty bog standard topic in many people's minds, especially in the minds of many younger Godzilla fans. And some time ago in the past, when I was a lot younger, I was guilty of thinking about this as well. So considering I have matured and become minimally, I would say, experienced in game design and programming in general, I wanted to cover the subject because I feel like I have a better understanding of it now than I used to. Hopefully these notes actually pay off, finally. Okay, major point number one. Quote, constraints need to be set. If you give too much freedom to the thought of a city builder arena constructor within a 3D Godzilla fighting game, you inevitably end up in a hellscape of your own design. Not exactly sure how to segue into this, so let me just go off of what I wrote down here. One of the major developments from Destroy All Monsters Melee to Godzilla Save the Earth and then continued in Godzilla Unleashed on the Wii and in the PlayStation 2 version was mutable terrain. If you don't know what I mean by that, mutable just means changeable. Best way I can kind of make this point is to explain it like this. Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee on the GameCube and on the Xbox had it pretty much so that every single map, every single arena was flat. There were no hills, there were no slopes. And in my attempts to source and find things to cite for this video, I could not find it, but I could swear that at some point in the past, Simon Strange, one of the lead developers, if not the lead developer for most of the Atari Pipeworks Golden Trilogy, said, again, I don't have a source, that that was one of the major developments that occurred from Destroy All Monsters Melee into Godzilla Save the Earth. And I just want you to think about this from a cold, sterile game developer mindset. When you develop a video game, you pretty much have to test every possible condition inside of which gameplay can occur in order to squash out all the potential bugs that may ruin.
This evening is ruined. Look, wait, what? This evening is ruined. The whole evening is ruined.
A user/player's experience with the game. If you fight on a flat surface, such as the arenas in Destroy All Monsters Melee, that eliminates difference in height and difference in height across an animation's movement from the equation. You don't have to focus on that. You don't have to worry about anything breaking that you could not necessarily foresee. Call to mind the fact that quality assurance or QA testers have to run through every video game that releases prior to it coming out, and hordes of beta testers have to run through all of the tests. So they have to test to make sure that if you hit the punch button, punching works, but they also have to test if punching works, if one player is higher above than another player. They have to test if punching does the right amount of damage if you have a certain power up, or if you are are in a certain status effect state. I have not done extensive professional QA testing on anything that I have not developed myself, but all I know is that one time at my previous job, I spent a literal entire workday trying to figure out a problem that a coworker of mine figured out inside of less than 5 minutes. So when you ask for a Godzilla city builder, arena builder, you have to kind of keep that in mind. Limiting the amount of things people can change makes it a lot easier for the developer of a Godzilla 3D fighting game 3D arena builder to test out the mode or the feature in question so that they can bring it to you with confidence as a player so that you can use it and enjoy it. The amount of play testing that any given normal person wants to do with such a feature as this is very limited. You know, most people, normal people, do not have legions of beta/QA testers that they can afford whenever they decide to add a custom map to their game. And on that point, professional publishing companies that pay for the games that get made really only have a limited amount of financial/monetary resource to commit to any given project. And I would argue that that is substantially elevated by the fact that if you're doing this specifically for a Toho Godzilla or even a legendary MonsterVerse Godzilla fighting game, as a publisher, you spent so much money to get the very license itself to begin with, so you can't really allow the player too much freedom when it comes to designing a custom map. And I know this because I was around for the birth and subsequent demise of the Colossal Kaiju Combat Kickstarter campaign, game, whatever you wish to call it. If I remember correctly, Colossal Kaiju Combat eventually ended up going the way of the dinosaur because the environment designer for the project passed unexpectedly and tragically. So if you are going to be so bold as to design a custom arena environment builder for a 3D Kaiju fighting game, your best bet is to follow in the footsteps of video games such as Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which I have included a picture of here, as well as games such as Climax Racing's ATV Off-Road Fury 4, both of which had environment stage builders packed into their content, but anyone who has interacted with them for any length of time knows that those environment builders constrained you to some degree in order to make themselves work. In truth, this does not really hinder the idea of a 3D Kaiju arena builder mode as much as you would perhaps think it would. I remember there was an entire stage builder stage sharing website built around Super Smash Bros. Brawl's stage builder, and just generally speaking, I would say that giving players restrictions on the kind of levels that they can construct tends to bring out a sort of sporadic creative spirit in people. I mean to say, and I don't mean to make this sound more profound than it is, but human beings tend to push the limits of whatever system they find themselves occupying or encountering. No matter how much you try to constrain a 3D Kaiju city arena builder in order to make it accessible to casual audiences, there will be an audience of hardcore fans of whatever game you put it in that pushes it to the limit. There are a few edge cases, though, that I do wish to bring up, however briefly. I can talk more about it in the comments section. Like I said, the last video that I edited ended up way longer and way more painstaking than I would have liked it to have been. So I'm going to try to keep this cliff-noted relatively brief. Point number one, traffic. I think traffic and vehicles are pretty much a non-issue. Pragmatically, the best way to deal with city traffic and roads within a 3D Kaiju fighting game environment would just be to have ploppable, droppable chunks of road, kind of like, ironically, the track builder in ATV Off-Road Fury 4, which I will probably use and or probably already have used in this video. Basically, in my head, the simple way to handle traffic is basically just to say to the player metaphorically, not literally, and I guess more directly in in the game's code say if enough road exists on a map. So, I don't know, let's say if the road is longer than 3 squares long, every couple ticks or frames, the game just checks to see if there are any cars there and if the player slash monsters in the match are within a certain distance. And if true, if such is actually the case, spawn in some civilian vehicles that can be destroyed during gameplay. I'm thinking a lot like Godzilla Save the Earth vanilla here, and I guess to a lesser extent, the mod Godzilla Save the Earth Melee. This is not SimCity or Cities Skylines. The focus of an arena city builder in such an environment as a 3D kaiju fighting game is not such as to require elaborate, fully fleshed out traffic systems. Military vehicles require even less thought on the part of a user of a city building, arena building system such as this. I would just have it so that custom maps have procedurally generated military vehicle spawn points. Attack helicopters don't even need that. Really, the only way you could run into some complication is if things more interactable slash important than regular tanks get added. If you decided to have like maser tanks and freeze cannons and whatnot in there. Talk about that in the comments. I haven't really thought about that too much. Like I said, I'm kind of going based on the system of things as was present in the vanilla Godzilla Save the Earth. Edge case number 2, water. Water is the only instance where I can think of terrain elevation changes being available to a player in a vanilla environment. Obviously, there's going to be people that hack and abuse a city builder system. I know Super Smash Bros. Brawl had many hacked and exploited stages over the years that the stage building community for Brawl was active. But I feel like easiest way to incorporate water within a custom 3D fighting game stage builder would just be ploppable big chunk stage assets. I'll talk about that in a little more detail when I cover buildings and general placement of stuff. But I think in general, it would be a good idea to kind of box the player in inside of a flat environment, kin to yet different from the kind of space limitations of Super Smash Bros. Brawl. And what I mean by that is small, medium, and large. Except in this case, I would not have it be obviously something facing a metaphorical camera. I would have it kind of be a aerial view kind of thing. Like if you top down look at the total amount of area that the player has to work with, it would be a square. Obviously, the boxing ring in Destroy All Monsters Melee and Godzilla Save the Earth is a little bit too small, but I don't know exactly how big you would want to go with the total size given to a player to work with. And in addition to just basic inclusion of water, I feel like you could also include lava flows as we're seen in Godzilla Unleashed on the Wii and PlayStation 2, because effectively, from a programming perspective, lava, quote unquote, is just water that inflicts minor chip damage every couple seconds to any monster slash player that occupies its boundaries any given number of frames of gameplay. Kind of tying into that is the third thing, building. Much like the ATV Off-Road Fury 4 track builder, I feel like you should just be able to place buildings and roads, for that matter, on a grid that covers the given area of the custom map that the player is working with. I do not have any experience with city builders or grid building game systems, but I can't imagine it would be that difficult to implement and program into a 3D Godzilla or Kaiju fighting game of this sort. And I mean, Godzilla Save the Earth and Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee and even Godzilla Unleashed had plenty of buildings that you could kind of use like Super Smash Bros. Brawl used many of its stage building elements, and just have the player pick any given asset and then, you know, top down look, plop it on the map somewhere, and, you know, among those things you could plop big chunks of water, roads, buildings, boulders like were present on the Monster Island map, and I would even include special buildings, quote unquote, you know, those buildings in Godzilla Save the Earth Vanilla that allow allow you to pick up battering weapons. Some of the small buildings from that same game that were basically just explosive oil tankers. I would even have cargo ships, much like in the Tokyo map of Godzilla Save the Earth, that you can only place on bodies of water. Not bodies of lava, bodies of water. There is a lot of potential creativity that you could bring through special objects in this sort of vein. Geysers of lava, ice that causes the monster that comes into contact with it to kind of slip, just like Brawl had the ice blocks. Yes, point number 4, so a bonus point because I forgot about it and did not realize how much I had written in my notes, is that you could have it so that the player is able to choose item spawn points, so the energy, health, and airstrike power-ups, where they go. I'm inclined to say that maybe that should just be procedurally generated based on the layout of the map that the player generates through map creation, but off the top of my head, I can't think of a crude pseudocode algorithm that would cover such a thing. That's not to say it doesn't exist. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. So that's kind of just the basic general idea. There are some limitations to this system, but I don't think they're really avoidable ones. Obviously, you have the guarantee limitation of hardware and, you know, how much stuff are you able to plop down within a custom map, because even if the system of placing down stuff is fluid, fast, and efficient, even the most powerful hardware has its limits, and most of the people that a city slash environment builder generator mode would service would not have access to a desktop computer capable of landing mankind on the moon in the present day. So there would naturally have to be some level of limitation in that respect. But I would also say that if you were imagining adding every single world monument into a single map, you probably wouldn't be able to do that due to legal issues. And I say that because if memory serves, Atari had to license many of the monuments present in, at the very least, Godzilla Save the Earth, and thus any 3D Kaiju fighting game that would attempt to include a mode such as this would not necessarily be able to allow those monuments to be destroyable or placeable in a city builder mode, should it be included. I'm just saying, there's some possible limitations that could be encountered even in a very broad system or application. Oh, and I guess one last thing, much like Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which let you pick from mountain, ruin, and future tech template environments, I imagine any maps created through a custom environment builder, such as the one that I have outlined hypothetically in this video, would probably be limited to something similar: grassy plains, sandy wasteland, icy wasteland, surface of the moon, surface of an asteroid, surface of an alien planet. They probably sound very, very vague and stereotypical. That's because that's what you would have to work with, given the constraints of an environment builder in the first place. Most of the flavor and sauce,
Yeah, you know, they get the straight time,
so to speak, for a mode such as this would come from player ingenuity and community effort to bring really interesting stuff out of the system, which is, from my perspective, what should motivate a 3D Kaiju fighting game in the future, licensed to Godzilla, Gamera, or otherwise, to attempt such a mode, because to my knowledge, I don't think we've gotten anything with this sort of gameplay feature built into it yet. So overall, I want you guys to kind of play around in the playground of the comment section and kind of tell me what you think. And even though I wrote a lot of notes, I didn't necessarily read it verbatim for this video. There's a lot that I have to say about even the many things that I did talk about in this video, because like I said, I have, albeit limitedly, some experience with game design, and I grew up playing Godzilla Save the Earth, so I am flush with thoughts about how this could work and how it should work. As a result, I will probably engage with any comments I get under this video with haste and enthusiasm. So let me know what you guys think. Again, please check out the merchandise linked in the description and in the pinned comment. Like, comment, subscribe, boost the video in the algorithm. I I would very much appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed and took it easy while you watched along. And until next time, guys, I will catch you on the flip side.
I miss my wife, Tails. I miss her a lot.